And greetings. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand, but let's face it, not that much in demand right here on BlazeTV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can email the program, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. At Steve Deace Show. Look for Steve Deace on MeWe and Gab, as well as Parler, when that eventually returns. If you like censored clips of the program, and who doesn't, right? The only thing better than unfiltered Steve Deace is the censored version, where you get even less. Go to youtube.com/Steve Deace or rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. We have a jam-packed show for you today. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley will be joining us at the bottom of the hour. Theology Thursday, we'll get into the ethics of voting for mental illness. Gotta say, when I got into this 15 years ago, didn't think that's a show we'd be doing. But here we are. Right?
Now it's kind of all we do.
Yes. And then 3 non-political questions. I don't know. Are we 10 minutes away from voting for pedophiles? What do you think? Or is it 15 minutes?
It's the cost of freedom.
It's indeed. It's a blessing of liberty, is it not? Yes, indeed. So we'll get into that with Theology Thursday, 3 non-political questions and more coming your way. But before we delve into all of those zany hijinks, here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by abandoning reality to save reality. Caitlyn Jenner had his interview with Sean Hannity to talk about his gubernatorial run in California.
My friends are leaving California. Actually, were at my hangar. The guy across right over from me, he was packing up his hangar. I said, "Where are you going?" And he says, "I'm moving to Sedona, Arizona. I can't take it here anymore. I can't walk down the streets and see the homeless." I don't want to leave. Okay, either I stay and fight, or I get out of here.
Supposedly conservative info babe Tommy Lahren says, quote, "As crazy as it sounds, Caitlyn Jenner is the most impressive and relatable candidate for California governor I've heard from so far." In other news, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky is making the former CDC mask is better than a vaccine director look better every single day as she defended her center's guidance for children in summer camps, including that all those over the age of 2 should wear masks outside.
But doesn't the science say that you're so much less likely to pass it outside at this point? And doesn't the advantage of kids being able to do things, more things, doesn't that outweigh the very low risk?
I think not all outside is the same. So outside playing tennis, outside swimming, all of those things where you're far apart from one another. If you have a group of 10-year-olds crowded trying to get over a soccer ball and they're all breathing heavily, I think you need to wear a mask because, yes, there's decreased infection risk outside. But if you're all breathing heavily on top of a singular soccer ball, that has the potential. And we've seen a lot of outbreaks associated with youth sports.
Biden Education Secretary Miguel Cardona still can't say whether schools should be open across the country.
Is there any defense now for not having all the schools open?
You know, one of the things that I learned from my experience is that one size does not fit all.
Do you think the schools should have been open earlier?
You know, without looking at the context, it's difficult to answer that.
Here's Kamala Harris on the tarmac about to board Air Force Two when she kisses her husband while both are wearing their masks. Daily Defiance, we go to the homeland of the chief choir master of the Branch Covidian cult, Mike DeWine's Ohio, where Jacob goes to Walmart without a mask. Back to New York, where Matt and Tina do their grocery shopping maskless. And finally, Lynn in Virginia, who walks through IKEA of all places with no mask like a boss. The Daily Caller asked random DC residents outside how long they want to continue wearing masks.
Do you think we should wear masks forever?
Indefinitely?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, even if you get the vaccine.
Do you think we should be wearing masks forever and ever and ever?
I believe so.
definitely. Like, you see in a bunch of other countries where they already were wearing masks.
I'm an ex-nurse, and I agree. It's airborne, and we should continue masking until everyone is safe.
And now a hodgepodge of news nuggets from around the country. A Wisconsin dairy farmer with 2 prosthetic legs is suing the Biden administration over what he calls a racist COVID relief plan that disqualifies him because he's white. Adam Faust, who runs a herd of 140 Holsteins on his family farm in Chilton, joined other plaintiffs in the lawsuit filed last week in Green Bay, alleging the loan forgiveness program illegally discriminates against them. At issue is a $4 billion program tucked into the Biden administration's COVID-19 stimulus plan that forgives loans for farmers and ranchers who are Black, Native American, Hispanic, or Asian, but not those who are white. Lubbock, Texas has become the 25th American city and one of the largest to become a sanctuary city for the unborn. Voters in the city passed an ordinance recently outlawing the murder of babies. A teen in Florida is facing prison time after allegedly rigging her high school's homecoming queen vote with the help of her mother. Emily Rose Grover, who is 17 years old at the time of the alleged crime, is being tried as an adult after she and her mother hacked into the school's computer system to cast fraudulent votes for herself as homecoming queen. Now would probably be a good time to remind you that prosecutors in Washington, D.C. offered a plea deal to the 13 and 15-year-old girls who were charged in the murder of an Uber Eats driver a couple of months ago. The Arizona House of Representatives passed a bill banning critical race theory from being taught in public schools. The bill now heads to the Senate. The bill would ban schools from promoting the racist curriculum and fine teachers $5,000 for teaching it, if not balanced with an opposing perspective. Disneyland just reopened in California, and now they're finding themselves at the butt end of the infamous social media mob after fans got a glimpse at the renovated Snow White ride. People, including one rider at the San Francisco Gate, are upset that the grand finale of the ride features the prince kissing Snow White without her permission in order to break the evil queen's spell. And finally, an update from Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I'd say even if you live alone, I would wear a mask in the house, especially in the shower, because frankly, droplets can make their way through the drain and come up through somebody else's toilet, infecting them with COVID through the anus. Ballpark, in 2 to 5 to 20 years, we can start thinking about considering the idea of pondering, the thought of conceptualizing the possibility of maybe, perhaps reopening, but probably not. I would avoid having any fun whatsoever in the near to far future.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Wine down in Argentina. They make this really dark red wine with Malbec grapes grown in vineyards at 9,000 feet. They have lab tested these wines, found that they contain up to 10 times the level of a longevity and heart health nutrient called resveratrol. All right, resveratrol is some powerful stuff. It pops up again and again in studies on longevity, heart health, brain health. These wines also have 90% less sugar, fewer chemicals, fewer additives. If you love to grill this time of year, whether it's with steak or barbecue, red wine goes great with red meat, makes it even healthier for you. And it tastes great. All three of us have tried a couple of bottles of this wine. Notes of blackberry, leather, cherry, and smoke. Again, all three of us would endorse these wines. They taste great. And right now, the guys at PatriotWine2021.com, they're giving you 50% off their best Malbecs right now. 50% off shipping too. 50% off the wine and 50% off the shipping. Wine always makes a great gift. PatriotWine2021.com. Again, that's PatriotWine2021.com. So let us now dive into this montage, and we're going to get more into the Bruce Jenner thing next hour for Theology Thursday. For now, I will say this. A man who was once the quintessential portrait of traditional American masculinity, who now wants to be considered as a woman while looking absolutely ridiculous and sounding like every bearded lady act ever. And yet didn't have the balls to go through with it and actually cut his balls off. They're still there, apparently. The more I think about it, he is a perfect symbol, judgment, metaphor for the modern Republican Party. That is as on brand, that's as on the nose as you can get. There is no better mascot for the National Republican Party than that.
Goodbye, elephant. Just a picture of Bruce.
What's an elephant? Do you know? Do you know what an elephant is?
I should ask its pronouns first.
Yes, indeed. Do we know what anything is? Do we know what anything is? Right? So the more I thought about this today, and man, I'd love to hop in a DeLorean, go find 1998 Sean Hannity after he's done doing like this hardcore culture war debate with Alan Combs on Fox News one night. He's heading out to his car or his driver to head home for the evening to see the wife and kids. And I mean, Marty, you've got to come to the future with me. And maybe that Sean Hannity would look at me and just like Michael J. Fox does in Back to the Future too. What's wrong, Doc? I mean, do we grow up, become like complete a-holes or something? Yes, you do. Yes, you will not believe the arguments you're going to make. You will not believe what you will interview. You will not believe what you will subject yourself to. If that is the price of ultimate success in this business, I'll just hang out in Iowa. Thank you. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It was, the whole thing was ridiculous. And all the right, Tommy, hey, baby killings, conservative Laren, all the right people all responded to that zipper rattle. All of them did. All of the people you could have predicted are all now responding in kind. But we'll discuss that more from a theological standpoint next hour of the show. For now, was there anything else about this topic you guys wanted to say? Todd is giving me a look because he knows there's a lot more about this I want to say, and you are hoping I say it right now.
I just want you to keep talking so Aaron gives me those off-camera giggles that I love so much. It's just so absurd, and I can't see his face right now. All I can do is hear it. That's money.
These interviews with Biden administration people in lefty media outlets demanding benchmarks, demanding definitive timeframes, definitive answers. And this has actually been going on now for months. I'm fascinated by this because I think it's indicative of, hey, guys, we just did this last year to get rid of Trump. So anyway, back to Hamilton, right? You can't. I think the time for the Biden administration with this is running out. And these are pushbacks. Now, they're polite in nature, but they're pushbacks nevertheless. And I think that you're seeing that a lot of the lefties in the media are not Branch Covidians. They were just Orange Man batters. And with summer here beckoning, they are on their last COVID nerve. And I think it's imminent before some pimp slapping starts going on with some of these outlets. They want their lives back.
This goes to what we said yesterday about the difference between the Machiavellians and the cultists, because they had Machiavellian designs.
Yes.
But all the cultists you had to let out of the bag and dial up to 11 to make that happen.
Right.
Now they're all saying, I'm going to wear masks forever. You don't put that genie back in the bottle, Steve. They're crazy.
Right. I mean, the nurse who says, well, it's airborne. That's why we have to wear we wore masks because of droplets. You can't stop an airborne virus with a mask. We wore masks for droplets. Remember that? We wore masks for droplets. You can't stop an airborne virus with a mask. But she used to be a nurse, so okay. I mean, but you can just see these clips are happening almost daily now. These folks are getting tired of this. And notice there's no good answers. So let me tie this into Fauci and Bargain for a second, our best-selling book. Some of you may be concerned. I give this book to a loved one. I give this book to a friend of mine, and will they come back at me with something that, I hadn't considered and I can't answer? Nope. They won't. What they'll come back at you with won't be true. You'll just need to know the method of which to undo it. I think I told you guys this story the other day. I spoke at a Christian conference over the weekend. Nice young man comes up to me during the dinner and he's really frustrated because every time he tries to bring this data up about how masks don't work in America, people just say, well, we don't wear them in America, or we don't wear them enough, or don't wear them right. Look at Japan. And he goes, I don't know what to do with that. So I just grabbed my trusty phone here, Googled COVID, Japan, and the Olympics. And I just turned the phone around and just showed him like the first 3 stories were all like from the New York Times, Washington Post, because it's, of course, rigged for them. But they were all about how cases and COVID are exploding in Japan, imperiling the Olympics once again. You just need to know how to deconstruct it. And often just simply a Google search will do it, usually in the first page of results.
And that would include if you're talking to CDC Director Rochelle Walensky.
Yeah. She doesn't have any answers either. She doesn't have any.
I think Occam's razor means that I think the most honest answer is that her family has been abducted and they are going to hurt them unless she says all these things, because kids have to wear masks because of all the spread that's happened in sports. That's just made up.
It's like states like Iowa and Nebraska, which have been playing high school sports since last spring. Or summer, it's like they don't exist. It's like they don't exist. I mean, Georgia's had high school sports since last summer. It's like these things, they don't have anything. You need to understand this. There is no data point they have. Look at their weak responses. Look at Andy Slavitt's weak response to Chris Cuomo last week. I'm fully vaccinated. Why am I still wearing a mask? He asked him this 4 times. He doesn't answer. Look at the Biden education secretary in the clip that Aaron just showed. He doesn't have any answers. There isn't an answer you're going to get blindsided with. Now, they might confidently and stupidly repeat some fallacy as that they heard once as if it's law. And I'm sorry, if you don't have the gumption to stand up to that, you're not capable of being an American much longer anyway, okay? But you need to understand, there's no antidote to this, because this is the antidote. This book is what's in here, the data that's in it. Or go get it from another format if you don't want to give us $15. You'd actually give us $1.85, but that's okay. There isn't, watching these interviews from lefty media for the last couple of months, increasingly pushing back on this with Biden administration officials, should show you, if they cannot stand up, if they don't have some mic drop, answer. That makes sense then. To the people wearing their own jersey who are just tired of this scam. If they cannot respond to that, then they were never going to hold up to any meaningful cross-examination. There's no there. The artist formerly known as Bruce Jenner literally has more balls, has more activity going on between his legs than they do. There's no there. Nothing. There's nothing you don't know, nothing true that people will come back with. It's all a fallacy. There's nothing there. Nothing. Nothing. And that's why they can't even come up with something when getting gently prodded and pushed back from their own propaganda ministers. Their own Caesar Flickermans are like, okay, man, when do we, and this is all great, but, I want to go back to doing, I want to do that again. So when do we, put down the mask and, get back to, when do we do that? Okay. They don't have anything. There's nothing there. You're not missing anything. Nothing. Nothing. Less than nothing. There's nothing there. Nothing. Did I make that point clear?
Probably not.
Okay, let me repeat. There's nothing there. There's nothing you haven't thought of. There could be something there, and we have already thought of it, but they don't want to tell us this. Can you remember what that something could be? If it's a wholly synthetic organism or a synthetically modified organism. If they would like to admit this to us, well, that would alter the conversation to some extent. We still have more than a year plus of data of how this virus has behaved in our own country. We still have that, but we don't have nearly the assurance that that will be how it will maintain its behavior going forward in the future. We don't. But do they want to admit this to us?
No.
Have they admitted this to us?
No.
No. So then, they don't get that option, right?
Correct.
Since that option's not on the table, even though it should be, since that option is not on the table,
no quarter,
then they get nothing. They have nothing. They know nothing. You don't know. There is nothing else there. That's why their answers are so bad and so weak.
Can I tie this into Faucian bargain
of
as
course.
well?
Yes.
So the continued pushback, and it's not just questions, it's pushback from the media that you just mentioned as well. I was shocked, and really was shocked, in the first 2 to 3 weeks after Faucian bargain was released, and I've said something similar before, that we didn't get an article from the Daily Beast or Right Wing Watch or one of these Media Matters places, Right Wing Iowa radio host, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Not a peep. Has there been a peep
Nope.
from the left about this book?
No.
It reached number 1 on Amazon, stayed there for a while, reached number 1 on Wall Street Journal, number 4 on USA Today, and not a peep going after the chief, the high priest of the Branch Covidian cult, not a peep from the left. I think it's twofold. One, there's just too many footnotes in there. You did to the left what the left likes to try to do in a much less honest way to figures on the right, which is, it was just an overwhelming amount of evidence and footnotes. They didn't want to open up that can of worms.
Much of it was their work, actually.
Much of it was their work.
Yes.
The other part of this is as well, at this point in time, they kind of agree. Not because they necessarily agree with the science. They agree with the premise that it's time for this thing to go. It's time for this guy to go. Because you wouldn't have been able to write this book. Well, you could have written this book last year. It would have lasted a week before it got banned. And every single platform, left-wing platform on planet Earth would have tarnished you guys' name and this book's name. You would have gotten banned from every platform. You would have been Bakersfield, California doctors. Who are they?
Yeah.
If you would have written this last year, because this book last year came in the way of what they wanted. Now this year, I think it's actually helping them get what they want. And what they want is getting back to Hamilton.
I think you make two great, excellent points there. I mean, let's look at point number 1. Let's say they find one footnote they could quibble with. I mean, there's over 200 footnotes in here. We put this book together as fast as we possibly could. I will guarantee there is something in there that we interpreted incorrectly or could reasonably be criticized as being interpreted by us incorrectly. Fair? It's hard to go 203 for 203.
We accidentally killed the great Bob Uecker, so, things happen.
Yes. All right, but here's the problem. If you open up that conversation, if you find the 1 or 2 that we may have incorrectly translated or not correctly 100% portrayed potentially, If you open that conversation, we're going to force you then to deal with the other 99% of them that we did. And that's a can of worms you just don't want to open, number one. But I guarantee you, because I've worked in media for many, many years, and I've had some of these conversations off the record with people on our side. I promise you that there are left media people right now talking to people within the Biden administration saying, you have to end this, and you have to be seen as the one that ended it. Otherwise, you guys are losing 70 House seats next year. You're losing 10 Senate seats next year. You have to end this. Okay? You have to. We're for your own good, you have to end this. What is the exit plan? What is the benchmark that gets you out of this so you can claim the win? Right? Don't make the same mistake that we cornered Donald Trump's administration into last year, where there were no benchmarks for a win. And so it just went on and on and on, and you were in this no man's land. You could never be safe enough to satisfy us in the media and the cult we're inspiring. And then you let it go on for too long that you couldn't get to reopening fast enough to please your own base. Same thing's going to happen to you. When the Atlantic was writing stories like what they wrote yesterday, they're not writing this, folks, because they suddenly realized, we should do some journalism. They're concerned. They're concerned a portion of their own base is not going to allow them to let go of this in time to not be mightily punished politically for this. Would they make the same mistake Republicans made with Obamacare after the 2016 election? That issue decimated the Democratic Party. Over 1,000 Democrats lost their seats in federal, state, and local offices after Obamacare's enactment. But by the time we got to the end of 2017, the healthcare issue that had destroyed the Democratic Party, the Republicans took on full ownership of it because they refused to fully cut the cord of Obamacare after running successfully on it for more than 2 cycles. And then they made the decision, we're going to keep the regs and cut the subsidies. Well, when you do that, guess what happens to the costs? Since all the regs are there, demanding that men get pap smears, the regs are there, but the subsidies aren't. So what happens to the cost, brother? What happens to that? They go up. So now you've got the worst of both worlds. Now we've got everything about Obamacare we liked, hated, and none of the stuff anybody liked. Number one issue in exit polling in the 2018 midterms, do you know what it was? Healthcare. And Democrats won 40 seats on the issue that had just decimated their party. When Donald Trump took the oath of office in January of 2017, there were the fewest elected Democrats in America since before the Great Depression. The very next cycle, Democrats won 40 House seats on the issue that decimated their ranks. Democrats are threatening to do the exact same mistake right here. Their media, just like we were begging the Trump administration at this time last year, pounding the table. Fire Fauci, take back control. Why are you criticizing Brian Kemp? Remember all those shows?
Yeah.
And by July 4th, we thought, we're trying to get this guy reelected harder than he is. Remember that?
Yes.
This is their media is doing that version of that now. And it's going to start like it started with us. Well, maybe they know something we don't know. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's politely prod, right? And then we politely prodded and found they don't know anything more. And then it got about a month or so later, it stopped being polite, right?
Yes.
That's going to happen over here. They understand something wicked this way comes, and they're going to own the lockdowns entirely as a party. And the reverb on that thing's going to be a motherless goat. If Joe Biden's administration doesn't do what Trump's never did and figure out a way to claim victory and get out and get back to normal fully. More in a moment. You know, in the chaos of 2021, every law-abiding citizen must know how to defend your family before, during, and after a self-defense incident. That's why you want to take Patriot Academy's Constitutional Defense course. It's hosted at the Front Site Firearms Training Institute, just outside of Las Vegas there in Nevada. It offers a unique combination of intellectual, physical training that you can't find anywhere else. For those of you that also listen to our colleague Daniel Horowitz's podcast, this is the course that he's participated in and talks often about on his show as well. It's the premier firearms and self-defense training organization in America. They train approximately 50,000 people each year at their 550-acre complex, not just on the physical aspects of self-defense, but also intellectually on what your rights are, the Constitution, where liberty and those things come from. And right now, if you want to register for the May 30th or June 6th courses, you can do so today and get a 90%. That's an incredible discount, obviously. 90% off the training. Now, you've got to take care of your logistics, but the training itself, they're going to practically give it to you for nothing. 90% off if you go today to constitutioncoach.com. And yes, this is a family-friendly training program. You can bring the entire family with you. Constitutioncoach.com. Again, that's constitutioncoach.com. New book just released this week, The Tyranny of Big Tech. The author, U.S. Senator from the state of Missouri, Josh Hawley, joins us here on the program. Senator, it's good to have you with us on Blaze TV. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the word tyranny. We toss around a lot of terms these days, right? And a lot of them are for effect politically. Make the case that indeed we're victims of tyranny from the oligarchs there in Silicon Valley.
Well, oligarchs is really the right word. I'm glad you keyed in on that. Just look at what these big tech companies, monopolies, that's what they are. Just look what they've tried to do just in the last, 6 months, 9 months. They've interfered in a presidential election by trying to suppress reporting about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden right in the thick of the presidential election. They got together, throttled down that New York Post story. Look what they did in January when they kicked the sitting president of the United States off of their platforms, deplatformed other conservatives and libertarians, and have generally tried to control and censor speech in this country for millions of Americans. It's crazy stuff. Their power is only getting more and more vast because their monopolies are only getting bigger. And I try to argue in the book that we've got to take them on. We've got to break up these monopolies.
So when this issue, Josh, when it first emerged a couple of years ago, my initial conservative inclinations are, man, I really do not want government getting involved here. Okay. Because I erroneously thought that these things still existed in a free market. Then I started talking to people that have tried to start companies or alternatives to these platforms. And it's not just the market share that they control. That would be monopolistic on its own, but the means of production itself they control. It's a little bit like if you wanted to compete with Standard Oil 100 years ago, you couldn't even buy a rig, land. I mean, they owned everything. Okay. And so you develop a phenomenal competitor to Twitter. Good luck getting it actually marketed in the various app stores that Google controls, Apple controls. So it's not just, hey, they came up with a great product. You know, we had this debate about Windows in the 90s, right? And should that be open sourced or not? It's not just that they came up with a great product that just controls the marketplace. That would be a monopolistic debate in and of itself. But these companies even control the means of production and distribution, which just makes it virtually impossible for you to compete with them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Parler is an illustration of this. You look at a potential competitor to Twitter, still very small, but it was beginning to get some traction back towards the first of the year, end of last year. And what happened? When Apple and Google, who control the two app stores, and then Amazon, that controls much of the cloud, when they decided that they wanted Parler to be gone, snap of the fingers, it's gone in like 48 hours. That's monopoly power. And the reason, I'm with you, by the way, on the need for free markets and competition. That's what we need more of. And the reason that folks can't go to alternative platforms is there aren't any alternative platforms. And the reason there aren't alternative platforms is that the dominant monopolies are suppressing competition and suppressing new market entrants.
So I've used this analogy on this issue in the past. Tell me if you think it's appropriate. When I was a kid, Ma Bell got broken up by the courts, I believe it was. Now imagine in the 50s, 60s, 70s before that occurred. Ma Bell had decided, you know, we don't like what you'll say over our phone lines. We don't like the opinions you'll convey. We don't like the viewpoints you possessed. We don't want those things said over our phone lines. So we're not going to allow you to plug in to the information age of that era. I can't even imagine. I mean, they were broken up strictly for monopolistic antitrust business practices. But if they tried to put their thumb on the scale ideologically, we probably would have broken them up a lot sooner than the 1980s. Is that an appropriate analogy to what is going on here? We won't let you plug into the information age of your era unless you fit through our personal Overton window.
Yeah, I think it really is. And I think the control over information that these companies have, the big tech companies have, is something that's really unprecedented in our history. I mean, as you point out, the telephone companies at least never tried to control the flow of information or news, but the tech companies do. They control what we see. They control how news stories are written. You know, they famously forced journalists to rewrite stories, to change the way that the stories are constructed, to change how headlines are written, all of that stuff. The tech companies are now the major distribution channels for news in this country. And as we found out last fall, they get to decide what news is relevant, what's not, and what people are going to see. And if you don't like it, you don't have any recourse right now. That is a huge, huge problem, which is another reason why we've got to break up their power and restore some real competition to these markets.
So let's get to remedies then. There was a lot of debate the last year plus of Section 230. I think we're way beyond that. I think we're looking at antitrust conversations of are these public utilities or not. But what do you think? I mean, you're on the front lines of this every day. What are the remedies here?
Yeah, I agree with you on Section 230. I mean, listen, what we can do under 230 is we can give individuals the right to sue if they are deplatformed and the platforms don't do this in good faith. You know, right now, the terms of service that Facebook, let's say, Google, Twitter, that they offer you, those aren't enforceable. If they violate those terms of service and they deplatform you for reasons that aren't in good faith, you can't do anything about it. I think we can and should give people the right to enforce those terms of service, make sure that these companies are acting in good faith. And the way to do that is take them to court. So we could do that, but I think we've got to do more than that. We've got to break them up. We've got to actually make sure that Amazon can't control all e-commerce in this country and control the cloud in this country. And make sure that Google can't control all search in this country and then also control fiber optics. I mean, we've got to break these companies up and restore some real competition. And the last thing I'd say is this: if none of that's possible, then we are going to have to treat them like utilities. We are going to have to treat them like common carriers. I think that would be my last choice. But if at the end of the day, the companies can't be broken up, we can't get enforcers to do it, we can't get the law changed to really address these current needs, then we're going to have to treat them like utilities and common carriers.
I can't believe I'm going to say what I'm about to say, but this is how I've had to change with the times in which we live. I'm at the point now, I think we almost are better off trying to oppose big government than big business. Because these big business companies are mega global monoliths now, conglomerates now. I mean, how much can you really nosedive their share price, really, to truly inflict damage on them for putting their thumb on the scale when they've got so many customers in China, India, and and places all over the world waiting to take the American marketplace's place? And at least with big government, as terrible as it is, I can vote new people in that put in another group of bureaucrats that I prefer, that are closer to my alignment, my belief system. Have we gotten to the point now where big government might even be more directly accountable to the people than some of these monopolies we're discussing?
Yeah, I think that's very possible, Steve. I mean, listen, our founders understood the situation. They were opposed to aristocracy and oligarchy in any form. And they understood that could happen in government. It could happen in society. And by the way, anytime you get concentrations of power, let's say in the economy, like in these monopolies, it will always become political power. Always. We saw this a century ago. You referenced Standard Oil, the railroads. What did they do when they became so powerful? They tried to start controlling politics. What is big tech trying to do? Control politics by using the power that they have amassed with the help of government in the marketplace. So my view is this: we have got to confront the monopoly powers of these companies. If we don't, they will run our government and they will run our society. And that is a danger to liberty. Monopoly and liberty do not go together.
Finally, you mentioned Amazon. I know you had an issue with getting this book released with its original publisher. So a lot of people, with our most recent book on Anthony Fauci and his, shall we say, spotty record, a lot of people in our audience didn't want to buy the book from Amazon.com. Well, we didn't want to put it on Amazon.com. And then until I learned from my publisher that 83% of all books sold every day in America or via Amazon.com. There was just no way we were going to be able to mass distribute this to have the impact we wanted it to have without utilizing them. And when Tucker Carlson, who endorsed your book, had me on his show talking about Fauci and bargain, he said to me on the air, I'm surprised they placed this book in their store. To which I responded, well, frankly, if I was as big a star as you, they probably wouldn't have. They'd have seen me, but they didn't see me coming. So I got to ambush them. And now that it got to number one on their site, they're kind of screwed. They can't banish the number one book. Then that's too obvious and it looks bad. But the fact that we're even having these kinds of conversations, Josh, stop and think about that. I mean, regardless of what you think about the government's vaccination effort or Johnson & Johnson, whether it should have been banned or not, if I go on my website and say, on my Twitter feed, and I would have said a month ago, hey, I've got postmenopausal women that are emailing me. They took the vaccine and they're getting menstrual cycles, just be aware of that. I'd have gotten banned for that. But then the government comes out and says, hey, we're going to pause the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And suddenly it's okay to say these things. Regardless of your views on that particular issue, the premise of free speech is not government clears the brush for us to let us decide what we can say. But that's exactly what is going on right now in allegiance with these big tech companies.
It is exactly what's going on. And the Democrats want to make that alliance even closer. The Democrats want these companies to work hand in glove with the government. They want them to become a censorship arm of the government. If you listen to the Democrats when these company execs come up to Capitol Hill, what will you hear? You'll hear the Democrats saying, well, you need to censor more. You need to get tougher on disinformation. You need to get tougher on fake news. What they mean by that is viewpoints that they don't like. And here we see that alliance between big government and corporate monopoly. We've got to break that up. I mean, free speech is not going to be safe in this country if a corporate monopoly like Facebook, like Amazon, can decide what we can say, what we can read, who we can talk to.
Finally, what do you say to people who are like, why didn't you guys do this? I know you've gotten this question a million times, so let me be the 1,000,001th person to ask. When you guys had total control of this process, political process in Washington a year ago, and they were already putting disclaimers and stuff on the president's messages during a re-election campaign, which was clearly a step of provocation to where they ultimately just outright banned him. When you guys had the majorities last year, why didn't you do anything about this? What would you say about that?
Well, I'd say it's a terrible missed opportunity. I mean, as someone who has, for the 2 years I've been in the Senate, who has introduced piece of legislation after piece of legislation, trying to take on big tech, pushing my colleagues to do it, talking about it, now writing a book about it. Believe me, I'm with you. And I think that, I will say this, I think that more and more Republicans in Congress are getting it. I think more and more Republicans are understanding the dangerous power of these companies. But let's not sugarcoat it. I mean, the last 4 years were a missed opportunity for Republicans in Congress in this way, particularly when you had the President Trump, that is, focused on this in the last year and a half, where he was urging Congress to do something on this issue, and Congress didn't. And I think it's a bad missed opportunity. And in some ways, we're paying for it now because the monopolies have only gotten stronger. But listen, the next best time to do something is right now. Mm-hmm. So we can't change the missed opportunities of the past, but we can start getting serious now when we need to.
Name of the book, The Tyranny of Big Tech. Its author, U.S. Senator Josh Hawley. He's been our guest here today on Blaze TV. Josh, thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. And this portion of the show brought to you by our friends over at Home Title Lock. I've been warning you about home title theft. This is where cyber thieves remove you from your home's title, become the owner. We said, hey, get Home Title Lock because you never know one of these data breaches when it might happen. Lo and behold, it just happened to Facebook. 500 million accounts exposed to cyber thieves, names, addresses, personal information, the kinds of things cyber thieves need to identify as you when they go online where your home's title is likely kept, claim to be you, and then forge your signature on a quick claim deed stating you've sold your home to them. They then liquidate all that equity, stick you with payments, maybe worse, evictions, foreclosure notices. That's why take advantage of Home Title Lock right now. First of all, go to HometitleLock.com, register your address, see if you're already a victim and don't know it so you can act. Then while you're there, take advantage of 30 free days of protection during this high-risk breach. Again, 30 free days of protection with the promo code RADIO. Promo code RADIO at HometitleLock.com. Thoughts on the conversation we just had?
The very last part that you talked about, talking about the government clearing the brush for free speech, free in air quotes. It really isn't the government that's saying the government that's saying it's okay to talk about this now. It's an incestuous relationship between big government and big business, because on the one hand, the big government is a lot of the times controlled, or at least have big donors from Silicon Valley that they want to placate. And so Silicon Valley says, we don't agree with this. We don't like this. So Silicon Valley, when they censor us, they can say, well, look, it was the government, you're going against the experts here. And then the government can say, well, hey, it's free business. It's free market. If you don't like it, go start a new one. It's an incestuous relationship that keeps going around and around and around. And the only person it screws is you and me.
And they each get to cover the other side's rear end by passing the buck. There's no ultimate accountability.
Correct.
Right.
It's obvious why the left feels that they need to destroy him, because he's just really good at this. He knows his stuff. He's tough, but he's also clearly can be tough with a smile on his face. And it's also clear not only why the left hates him, but while he can't get anywhere with the legislation he says he's proposed, because Ditch, just refuses to be in league with a guy who is his own man.
Ask yourself this question. Does somebody like Mitch McConnell remain in the power position within the Republican Party? Is he more or less likely to remain there? With or without big tech censorship of his own base?
He's more
likely. Yeah. Because if you really freed up that base to truly utilize fully the power of their activism and courage of conviction, and then use these as vehicles for them to coordinate and connect with one another, it'd be much easier to get rid of a guy like him, right? And put, if you wanted somebody like Josh Hawley in there instead, right? Indeed. We'll come back hour 2, Theology Thursday, voting for mental illness. Okay, we'll do that next. And we're back with hour number 2 here on Blaze TV radio and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. Let us know what you think about what we think. Steve@stevedeace.com is how you can email us. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. Look for Steve Deace on MeWe, Gab, and Parler when it finally returns. You can also look for censored clips of the program at youtube.com/Steve Deace or rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. And if you're a podcast listener, we're looking for you. We're looking for you to hit that subscribe button for us. Leave us a 5-star review, and we want to thank all of you that have done those two things already. Theology Thursday brought to you by our friends over at StartMail. Free email services like Gmail and Yahoo, they aren't really free. You are paying with your privacy. And since these companies have access to every email you send and receive, big tech can sell your data to the highest bidder. That's why you want to use StartMail to secure your email. It'll make it safe again. StartMail keeps your email private, period. Every email encrypted, even if the recipient doesn't use encryption, which means big tech cannot read, scan, analyze, or sell any personal information from your email ever. Not even Big Brother can snoop around your email. StartMail uses or prevents government agencies from spying on you, like in dragnet operations, because with StartMail, deleted means deleted. When you delete an email, it is gone forever. And StartMail uses their own servers, not Amazon's or anybody else's, which means they can't be put out of business by big tech. And they're also backed by the most stringent privacy laws in the world. So if you don't trust big tech, and you should not, start securing your email privacy with StartMail by signing up today. And you'll get 50% off your first year if you go to startmail.com/Steve. That's start with a T. Startmail.com/Steve. Get 50% off your first year today at startmail.com/Steve. So I got to tell you, I'm a total depravity kind of guy. But 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, probably even 2016, 2017, and maybe even 2018, Steve. would have not believed I'm about to do what I'm going to do. But when it goes fast. And we're not in those years anymore. It's now 2021. So unfortunately, we are going to have to use the precious time of Theology Thursday by discussing the ethics of voting for somebody who's obviously mentally ill. I kind of think it undermines the whole argument of preserving the sanctity of biological differences in intimate settings, athletics. I kind of think it undermines our entire argument there to then turn around and say, but fire up the Aerosmith dude looks like a lady for the highest executive office in the most populous state in the union. I kind of feel as if that should be self-evident. Anybody with an IQ teetering on double digits, or at least one morsel of soul remaining. However, there I go with my optimistic take on the American people, let alone our own ranks, yet again. My dangerous naivete, my eternal optimism getting the best of me, assuming that the ranks are just swelling with such discerning people that have IQs of 13. As I watch figures on both Fox News and Newsmax populate my news feed with pro-mental illness for California governor pitches. So since this is obviously going to be a thing for some people, now I'll tell you this. I don't think he has any chance of winning. 0. Well, he's got one chance. If you're living in a nation that is irrevocably under judgment, and God is trolling us directly. Now that's possible. But politically, in the natural, he has no chance to win. First of all, he's got the wrong letter after his name, number one. Secondly, there's going to be a percentage of his own vote that will not vote for him because of his insanity. He is going to gain 0 crossover vote. 0. There will be no, hey, they're not homophobes. No, they're not getting, none of those votes are happening. So politically, the math does not work. All right.
He's already the transgender
uncle.
Aunt Tammy.
He's Aunt Trans. Yeah, you're right. So politically, the math just doesn't work. So there's really no point analyzing his candidacy politically because it's a nothing. You should only analyze his candidacy theologically because the only way this happens, this would be like God sending Nebuchadnezzar to take Jerusalem down kind of thing. Like, that's the only way this occurs, because I cannot provide for you a political science formula for Bruce Jenner getting elected governor of California. It does not exist. All right. He's behind already, way behind in voter registrations, and he's going to lose a sizable segment. I don't know, probably if he got the nomination or if he got on the ballot. I don't know how the recall works. I think they all get on the ballot, actually. But there's a sizable segment. What's sizable? Is it 50% of California Republicans wouldn't vote for him? I don't think it's that high. Do I think it's more than 10% though? Hell yeah, it's more than that. So it's a significant amount. Are just never voting for that on site, period. So you won't make up enough of that elsewhere to overcome the registration disadvantage that you're under. So politically, this isn't happening. Prophetically, it might. I mean, if our Creator is done calling us to repentance and just is now just laughing, mocking, trolling us on the way out the door for our own insanity, he's like, you know what? Let me take my belt off one last time before y'all hit the ash heap, because you got it coming. Then it could happen, but it would require something like that. Politically, it cannot happen. So therefore, there's really only a theological analysis of the Bruce Jenner gubernatorial campaign. Now, I thought of a million different ways to approach this morning, and then I finally gave up, and I sent you and Aaron a text. You're Todd, he's Aaron. I sent you and Aaron a text this morning, and I said, you know what? Here's how we're going to do this. You guys are going to come at me with the challenges to this so that I make sure I'm not just rambling on a particular point, but answer the direct challenges we would get from, I guess we'll call it the right, the not left in America. I don't know, on why we should support this. Okay. That way I know I'm answering objections that people are actively going to attempt, as opposed to just philosophically wandering here for the next 20 minutes.
And I want you to know how rare this is. At most, another host might say, I want you to come at me, but just give me the questions and let me think about it.
Yeah, I don't even know what you guys are going to say.
You have no idea. That is absolutely rare. So we're going to bring it.
There's no point to doing this if you don't. Okay.
Steve, you've already made the case that Republicans should at least consider voting for Caitlyn, despite disagreements with him about his lifestyle. Because, as you've said, people aren't constructs. They're people. He's not his mental illness exclusively. He is a lot of things, and he clearly has some conservative ideas. Even if he's not as conservative, set aside the mental illness side, even if he's not as conservative as we'd like him to be, because you've also said in this day and age, we're going to have some strange bedfellows. Mm-hmm. And even if we disagree with some people on some existential matters, if they're in my camp on this one, we have to consider it. You said it recently, very recently, with Naomi Wolf. Mm-hmm. Why does the Naomi Wolf principle not apply to Bruce Jenner?
Boy, I'm glad we started here. This is the most important question that could come up in this entire conversation. So I'm glad we're beginning with it, so we make sure we address it thoroughly. What am I having to change? What am I having to change about the laws of nature and nature's God to align with Naomi Wolf against COVID Stan? Nothing. What issue position has she demanded of me? What fundamental of existence has Naomi Wolf said, the price for you, don't listen to Chris DeBerg, pay the ferryman. Here is what you'll have to pay to get in the boat across and cross the river Styx for us to be united against COVID Stan. Here is what I'm going to need you, Steve Deace. You're going to have to overlook this in order for this alignment to occur. What accommodation am I being asked to make in order to align with her on this?
In fact, when it comes to the Venn diagram, she's been the only one pushing her circle.
That's exactly right.
Over to yours.
Which indicates...
now, and gladly, happily
yes,
so.
But that indicates also a level of sincerity on her part, correct?
Yes.
Because she is not just like whole cloth, just got up tomorrow and decided she doesn't believe a lot of the things on the other issues that she believed, right?
Right.
I mean, the fact that she's undergoing a transition through this process indicates its sincerity, right?
Sure.
Okay. So what is Bruce Jenner asking me to do in order to support him? What do I have? What's the price to do for that support, for me to take it?
Well, at the very least, look the other way on something that you have declared over and over again very publicly that is a fundamental hill to die on.
Yes, it may be the last one left that we have as a people, frankly, because we gave them up for 30 years. We kept saying it over and over again on the right. These aren't hills to die on. And now we're left with this is the only one left. The only one we have left is bearded lady. That's the only one left. We can't even go to the pedophile card because we already gave up fighting on the hill of murdering the kids before they were born. So I'm not being asked to compromise anything, I believe, in order to accept assistance from Naomi Wolf against COVIDstan. I'm not being asked to compromise anything, I believe, in order to accept assistance from Bill Maher against COVIDstan and Wokistan. Nothing. They're coming to me. I cannot connect with something that begins from the premise I have to disavow one of the most fundamental facts of the laws of nature and nature's God. There's no way I can get to a point of pulling a lever for Bruce Jenner without denying a fundamental fact of existence, reality, and God's law. I can't do it. The only reason he's here is because he's pretending to be a woman. As Brandon Tatum just pointed out on Twitter just a few minutes ago, this guy gladly accepted Vanity Fair's Woman of the Year award just a few years ago. He's down with this clown. Well, Steve, he says that we should keep biological men out of women's sports. You know what? You're right. If you're that gullible, why don't we just run a Planned Parenthood butcher? He's literally got the blood on his hands. He's done it with his hands. With his hands. He's murdered children with his own hands. And he'll do it again tomorrow. But he promises you he'll defund Planned Parenthood. Why not just make the same play? Just make the same play. Just do that. So no, there's no way I can do this without denying what I'm for, who I'm for, who I belong to. It's one thing to say we're all sinners. It's another thing to say, but he's insane. He's not mentally well. He's mentally incompetent. He's mentally ill, folks. It is not normal mental behavior to mutilate yourself. It is not. And he's not even committed to it. Listen to his voice. He's clearly not taking the hormonal blockers. He also hasn't gone all the way with it down below, if you know what I'm saying. He's not even committed to the new gender. He's insane. He's crazy. He's nuts. And the idea that you would entrust any transcendent principle to someone who cannot even be entrusted with their own identity as a human being is likewise insane. He's insane, and if you vote for him, you are too. You're insane. And I'll tell any of you this right to your face. I don't care. Line them up. You're insane. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
Well, you kind of already touched on this, but I think it's maybe important to flesh this out a little bit. You know, in eternity and transcendently, every time a human being sins, whether it's a one-off or whether it's a sin that ensnares you or enslaves you chronically, you're denying reality. Now, we're not talking about drag queen storytime hour, Steve. We're not talking about dudes competing against minor daughters, or even in college, your minor daughters on your track team. We're talking about a grown adult who is denying reality, yes, but every time we sin, we're denying reality. None of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. We're not talking about something that affects minors, the innocent here.
Why is that a problem?
We're talking about here an adult. So how is his sin, denying reality chronically, any different from anybody in Washington or your favorite senator who by hook or by crook, or maybe one-off on one-off occasions, denies reality by the legislation they support or the positions they support that you voted for yourself before and that you might vote for in the future. How is his sin any different?
How's it different than voting for Trump? Put the name on it.
Because
that's a great question,
you're
Aaron.
beginning right away. First of all, he has no record. As to your Trump question, it's why I didn't vote for him in 2016. He had no record. There was no record to justify the mental gymnastics and the moral calculus of just trusting another Republican, particularly one from New York, who had spent more time around Al Sharpton than people like me. There was just no justification for it I could make and look people in the eye and justify it without starting from a position of weakness and compromise to begin with. That's why I didn't do it. All right, so
similarly, it was kind of insane.
It was. This guy is clearly insane. As to it doesn't involve children, why is that the standard? Why is that the standard? It doesn't. First of all, it doesn't involve children at all. They have drag queen storytime hour at the California governor's mansion every damn day. That doesn't harm the children at all. We're gonna do drag queen storytime hour at the California governor's mansion every damned day. Every day we're gonna do it. Number one. So enjoy your blessing of liberty. That's happening every day. But number two, why if it's bad for children? I don't know. Are you masking your children right now at a school? Did you mask your 2-year-old in Michigan on the way to Costco? So I'm sorry, I'm not moved by the it's bad for the children as the new dividing line. No one's been harmed more by our COVID fallacies over the last year than our children have been, mentally, emotionally, intellectually, and they're the least susceptible to this, both as vectors and victims. And yet how many parents have done nothing for their children at all, but complain and bitch and moan? So I'm not going to be moved by it doesn't affect the children. We don't seem to care all that much about our children. And that's when we let them born. But if you have to ask me, is drag queen storytime hour at the California governor's mansion every day, is that bad for the children? I can't help you. You're beyond my level of help. The fact we're so debased we're even going to ask this? How can you trust someone? You know what? I could trust someone to defend my God-given rights, who looked at themselves in the mirror at the way God made them and mutilated it. That seems like a reasonable assumption. Well, Steve, it sounds like you don't think you could vote for an atheist. You'd have to make a really damn compelling case. Because in this form of government, where do my rights come from? God. You deny God exists. It's a tough case to make. Not saying it's impossible. I got asked this once by an atheist at CPAC. I told him it wasn't impossible, but you're going to have a real tough case to make. Because our rights got to come from somewhere, and they come from God. You don't believe there's a God. Could that be a problem?
Yes.
Yeah. How about the person who looks at themselves and says, this is not the way God made me? Let me mutilate myself. And then there's some sickening, ridiculous hybrid.
Either way, we're in did God really say territory?
That's exactly right. I can't engage you without denying that. I would argue, therefore, my engagement of you is sinful. I can't get around this. I can't do it. We all are single issue voters, by the way, so you guys can save me that question. Everybody is. Would you vote for a pedophile? Would you vote for an open Satanist? Would you vote for somebody who likes beating women? Would you do that? Somewhere, somehow, everybody within the sound of my voice right now has a no. Somewhere, regardless of what the alternative is or what they claim to believe. Well, then congratulations, you're a single issue voter. We found your single issue that you're a no on. So we're all single issue voters, so dismiss that fallacy as well. You can't engage this without a denial of reality. Did you see the look on Hannity's face during a lot of that interview last night?
Dead.
He's dead inside, man. Regardless of what he's doing on the outside, that dude's dead inside.
This leads to my next question.
Go ahead.
You believe strongly in finding the win in any situation, but you seem to be caving to the inevitability of the Kobayashi Maru on this one. That level of absurdity in that interview with those two talking to each other, isn't this a moment where letting it have its day is the thing that pushes it into the sea? Don't you advocate for this? Because it's like, fine, here, yes, you all get what you want, and you're all finally going to choke on it. Isn't there hope in that?
So you're asking me, let us do evil so that good may come? Is that what you're asking me?
I think I might be.
Yeah, I think you're asking me that. Yeah. I think it's, for example, last week when we asked the question, is it time for us to just go ahead and defund the police, right? Could I make the same, was I doing evil so good may come? Are the police my only option for me to defend myself?
No.
Are the police the only option that I would have in order to extract justice from an evildoer?
No.
Do I have the means of doing that myself?
Yes, in some cases.
In fact,
yes.
do I have a constitution that guarantees I have the means of doing that myself if need be, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think that's analogous to this situation. In the previous situation, I'm essentially making the argument that if you believe the police are an instrument of evil, then let's just go ahead and I'm calling your bluff that they're evil. If you think the police are an instrument of evil systematically, are there individual police that are evil? Yeah. But systematically, if we're saying defund the police, we're saying systematically the police are evil. If you believe that, then I'll call your bluff. Let's get rid of them and see what happens. See if we get more evil or less if that were to occur. This is the opposite of that. This is me now saying, I'm going to do this evil in order to grant for something good to happen in the end. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not allowed to do evil so that good may come. I'm allowed to make you live by your evil to hopefully learn from it. That's what Paul means when he says, hey, that dude in the front row there in the Church of Corinth with his arm around his mom or stepmom, throw that guy out. Let Satan have his way with him for his sin. And then maybe then after that's happened, he'll come back repentant and realize I shouldn't have my arm around my mom again, right? Okay, I can do that. I can make you live by your own standard, but I cannot do evil in order to make that occur. Evil times evil is what?
More evil.
More evil, yeah. Aaron.
Caitlyn Jenner's opponent in California says that he or she will literally murder every single Christian. Caitlyn promises that he will not. Who should I vote for?
How can you believe the promise? First of all, Gavin Newsom hasn't promised that. And he's been in office for the last few years. And has he done that? No. Secondly, why do you believe you can trust the promise of someone who doesn't trust the most basic fact of their own existence? And frankly, isn't even sold on their own transition away from that fact. Just not even sold on it. Before the whole trans thing became politicized, in another era, we would have just called Bruce Jenner a cross-dresser, a transvestite. That's what he was. He won't even go through with this. He still sounds like he sounded before. Still has the same male equipment he had before. He's not even invested in this. So then what is he even invested in? What's he invested in at all? Let me be Vanity Fair's Woman of the Year, but hey, we can't have men doing women's sports. I'm not even by chromosome still male. I am by equipment still male. I even sound like one. He's not even invested in what he's supposed to be a mascot for. He's mentally ill. This is the most populous, state in the union. You can find no one else. There is no one else in all of California who is not obviously mentally unwell. No one else can be an alternative to Gavin Newsom. If that is the case, get the hell out of there. Some of the largest churches in America are in that state. Greg Laurie, Rick Warren, John MacArthur. They can't produce one person? One! Who's not mentally unwell? Not one. And I only named a few. There's actually several more. No one? Then you should just leave. Why do you live there then? There can be no one else? Aaron, you told me something when he launched his website for governor.
Yeah.
What issues did he list there?
There were none.
None, but there was a button to do what?
Shop and donate.
Yeah. Brad Parscale, who got thrown to the curb in Trump world for grifting off of the Trump campaign. He's running this show. This is a scam. The whole thing's a scam. It's just not even the ideology behind it. That's a scam. But the activity in and of itself is a scam. You're being scammed in more ways than one. You're not just selling out. You're a mark. Warmer weather is here. We are going to be on the move more often. Maybe you're taking an anticipated trip. And so I like to use my earbuds so I don't have to hear on the airplane the 75 mask PSAs that they utter on every flight. Whatever the case may be, maybe it's a workout. That's how I use my earbuds every single day. Whatever the case may be, chances are you could use a pair of Raycons and take them with you because Raycons wireless earbuds can make it all the difference when it comes to crisp, powerful sounds at half the price of the premium audio brands, and they look great, feel better. These are the tightest fitting earbuds I've ever tried. I'm not constantly having to adjust them all the time. They come in a range of cool colors with customizable, easy for me to say, gel tips included for a comfortable in-ear fit. And they're built to go anywhere with a seamless Bluetooth pairing, compact charging case. You can use up to a 24-hour battery life with your Raycon earbuds. So listen up, Raycon's offering 15% off of all their products for our listeners today. Here's what you got to do to take advantage of that. Go to buyraycon, RAYCON as in Nancy, buyraycon.com/Steve. That's buyraycon.com/Steve, and you'll get 15% off your entire Raycon order. It's such a good deal. You want to grab a pair and maybe another pair to spare. 15% off your entire Raycon order at raycon.com/Steve. Aaron, before we get to 3 non-political questions, you thought there was one more issue that we had to tackle to conclude our Theology Thursday on voting for mental illness.
Yeah, and it's just, I think, along the lines of putting a finer point on things. The first question that I asked you, there were 2 false premises in there. You destroyed the first one. It's not affecting children. Well, what kind of standard is that? And yes, of course, it is affecting children. You destroyed that pretty well. The second false premise is this notion that the earthly consequences of sin are all the same. Now, eternally, yes, the consequence of every sin is the same, but the earthly consequences are not. The notion that Bruce Jenner's, or the artist formerly known as Bruce Jenner's, lifestyle choices is the same as stealing, petty crime, or some other sin, that's not the same in terms of earthly consequences. There is living a lifestyle that is a perversion of reality, which all of us to some degree, because we're all sinners, we all live double lifestyles. We all live perversions of reality. And in the moment of sinning, that is a denial of reality because you're denying that God really is who he says he is. But then there's a lifestyle of denial. I would say the homosexual lifestyle is a perversion of reality. The transgender lifestyle is a denial of reality by its very nature. So no, in terms of earthly consequences of sin, the guy, the senator, the governor, your state senator, your mayor, who struggles with anger, temper, with the drink. Now, those might manifest themselves in different ways and sometimes damaging and harmful ways that definitely warrant a consequence, whether it's not your support or getting arrested or something like that. But by the very nature of what we're talking about with the artist formerly known as Bruce Jenner, it is a denial of reality that you are assenting to by granting it any form of audience whatsoever. We ready for 3 non-political questions?
We are ready for 3 non-political questions.
We all have questions.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? A search and a question of identity. Why am I here? A question of meaning and purpose. Where am I going? Question of destiny.
Some better than others.
What sort of morality or proto-morality would you expect to find in a chimpanzee troop?
Injecting some levity into the demise of Western civilization. It's 3 questions on the Steve Deace Show.
It is a spring solstice. Is that even a thing?
No.
A spring solstice miracle that I actually remembered to come up with these questions before the show. Spring solstice miracle is a thing now. It's my reality, and we're going to run with it. Question number 1. What's on your Mount Rushmore of television sitcoms of all time?
Seinfeld.
I knew that was going to be your first one.
Yep. Kirstie Alley, Cheers. Though that was a demonstrably better show. Or maybe I just got older. That could be it too. I just got older, but even trying to watch it years later in reruns, I just liked the Kirstie Alley Cheers a lot better. So I would say Kirstie Alley Cheers, Seinfeld, Family Ties, and coming up with that. I'm always stuck. Every time we do this, I get stuck on the 4th one. I'm going to let you go, and then I'll see if I can, maybe you'll have one of my 4, and I'll be like, oh yeah, that should be on my list.
The Office.
Correct.
Yeah, that should maybe be on my list.
The Middle.
Okay.
Big with Our Family. Last Man Standing. And MASH.
I thought about MASH. I thought about it. All right, so I'm down. I'm thinking about MASH. I'm thinking about
it's
The
Beatles
Office
of sitcoms.
Okay. Aaron, what are you putting on there?
For me, it's The Office. It's Parks and Rec. I want to put MASH on there. It's just been so long since I've seen that, and I'm not sure necessarily, to me, it stands the test of time. I'm not sure if this is necessarily considered a sitcom, but this Canadian television show that was the treat, the Saturday night treat in the McIntyre household growing up, called The Red Green Show. It was on PBS. It was legitimately funny too. That's got to be on my list. And the 4th one, man, I don't know. I would say Home Improvement. I tend to remember watching that a little bit.
Yeah, I can remember that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to go with The Office for the 4th. So I'm at The Office, Family Ties, Seinfeld, and Cheers. I cannot believe I was the only one that put Seinfeld on the list. Wow. Okay.
I thought the stand-up was the best part of that.
Okay. Are you serious?
I really am. I never really got into it. So I haven't seen it from start to finish, probably like you guys have. But
okay.
I've only seen a few one-offs, and I thought the stand-up at the beginning of the show was the best part.
I can't believe you don't have Seinfeld on your list.
I just went with a more relevant to my family and what we've enjoyed together. And Last Man Standing and The Middle have been things you can sit your family in front of.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course.
Okay.
Had I not taken that tack, they would have been on there.
Okay. 2.
You got your 3 in, okay?
Yep.
Question 2. Now, this is not overtly non-political, but you don't have to make it political either. What's the best argument you've ever heard for something you don't agree with?
I'm going to let you take this one first. Go ahead.
The best argument ever heard. Yeah. You just needed time to think. I love it when you do that. Like,
was it that transparent?
That's the time when you're like, the host of the show says, you first
you
over
go
there.
Ahead. You go ahead.
Well, we just kind of got done. You and I actually off air were talking about it related to something else, but it's right now it's a trap that a lot of people are falling into, as conservatives often have. They'll their bumper sticker slogans and but and we talked about it with Senator Hawley to some degree. A private business can do whatever it wants to. No, it can't.
Mm-hmm.
It just can't. And nor is the customer always right. See, that's the other end of this spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're not. Neither one can demand that the other come in and flat out defy reality. In order to shop here, you have to walk on your hands for 5 minutes or hold a hand. Pick something else that's just clearly and obviously absurd, and you end up in a place no, we don't endorse that as a society. There is a social compact, and then we have to have a grown-up conversation about what that means. But neither side, this is like neither side has to, if you say, for this transaction to go through, you have to say my proper pronouns. No, we don't. The shopkeeper does not have to call the customer that, nor does the customer have to call the shopkeeper that. It's a fundamental denial of reality. But it does sound good.
It does seem a little odd for the same conservative media that helped make Jordan Peterson a worldwide phenomenon for failing to utilize the proper pronouns. That was the original gist of what led to his activism as a college professor, was his failure to use your pronouns. And now has some people within our own industry, after doing that, turning around and promoting for California governor somebody who doesn't even know his own pronouns. There is some irony there. Here's what I wanted time to think of. Arguments that I thought I truly lost. Okay?
Sure.
And I hate to say it, I couldn't come up with one. I could not. Okay.
Why did you set it up that way then?
So I
classic Deace.
Okay. Listen, I've lost arguments at home all the time, but they're about decisions, not like what he's asking about. Okay. So I'm going to go with the lesser of two evils. The reason why is it's actually true and a fallacy at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we're all what? Evil.
Yeah.
We're all evil to some extent, right? So you're always voting for the lesser of two evils. You're always marrying the lesser two evils. They're always doing the same. You're, Todd and Aaron. Could I find two better employees? I don't know. There's 330 million Americans. Chances are, yeah. Could you guys find a better boss? Probably. Okay. So everything is the lesser of two evils, right? Mm-hmm. Everything is. And so that can be a very difficult argument to get around, because invariably, east of Eden, you're choosing the lesser of two evils to a certain extent constantly, right? And so there's no way around that. And so ultimately, then how do you hold a plumb line in that, given that reality? Because there's a line between not making the perfect the enemy of the good and then just falling into complete and total moral subjectivism at the exact same time. And that's where arguments could get really personal with people, is where that line should be drawn.
It's well said. For me, and I promise I did not smoke a joint before thinking about this. The flat earth theory, the only thing in a certain segment of that, the only thing that they really have going for them is that they actually have a working explanation for gravity. Those of us in reality still really don't understand how gravity works. We have these things called gravitons, not even fully fleshed out yet. They actually have an explanation for gravity. It's that we're on a disc flying upward, and so that's forcing us down into the ground.
All right, before we do question 3.
That's interesting.
And I want to thank you for the 2 or 3 people in our audience who do believe in a flat earth that will now be emailing me, as they have consistently been doing recently.
Yeah.
Yes. If you are struggling with pain from your knee, neck, shoulder, for me, it's a left hip flexor, chances are that is because of inflammation in the body, and you want to make sure you deal with that inflammation before it causes permanent pain. That's why you want to make sure you get a product called Omega XL, backed by 35 years of clinical research. It attacks the inflammation that's causing your pain. Those pain relievers, topical rubs you use, they treat the symptoms, but not the cause. And if you don't deal with that inflammation, it only gets worse. So whatever you're suffering with, this is part of my daily regimen, so I'd highly recommend you give it a shot as well. Give Omega XL a shot to take on that stiffness, that soreness, that chronic pain that you're dealing with. And you can get a buy one, get one free deal from Omega XL right now. Buy one bottle, get the second one for free when you visit omegaxl.com/Steve. Again, that's omegaxl.com/Steve, or call 800-844-4888. That's 800-844-4888.
Yeah, flat earthers are just another form of Gnostics. Question number 3, Steve at stevedeace.com. Question number 3, is there a biblical subject outside of salvation and the core doctrines surrounding salvation that you have in your closed hand?
So for people that don't know, closed hand, we've talked about this in the show before. That's where we have like our convictions that we don't bend on whatsoever. And then in our open hand, we have our positions. And these are things that we even may feel very, very strongly about, but we don't think it is a denial of a first thing, that it's something that may cause you to lose fellowship with God or anything of that nature. Okay. So you said, which were the two that you said?
So do you have anything in your closed hand outside of salvation and the doctrines, core doctrines surrounding salvation?
Okay.
In your closed hand.
All right. The divinity of Christ. Jesus is God. The divinity of Christ would be in my closed hand.
But doesn't that count?
That counts as salvation. Yeah.
Because that's how the atonement happens. Yeah. I mean, obviously that circle is fairly broad and as it should be.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, if you guys want to interpret it that way, then I'm okay with that too. Then I would say, in my closed hand, anything beyond salvation. Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess at the end of the age that Jesus is Lord. That counts. Okay, I would put that. I'd put that in my closed hand. And I feel like there's an obvious thing I'm missing that should be in my closed hand that I can't think of right this minute, since we're putting a lot in the soterology camp. So what would I put in my closed hand that is not... would sola scriptura count?
That's implied, but you can put that in your closed hand.
Okay. I would put sola scriptura in my closed hand as the ultimate arbiter, not lone or exclusive, but ultimate priori arbiter of matters of conscience, truth, doctrine would be the scriptures. I'd put that in there.
That's what I was hoping you were going to say, because what do you think I'm going to say?
The opposite, probably. Yes. Yeah.
The Catholic Church is what it says it is because Christ himself founded it.
I think for me, it has to be, it's more of the principle rather than kind of a theological construct, but it's in the Bible, so it's theology, the principle of sowing and reaping. I may not know God's plan for anything, exact plan for anything. I do know that everybody will reap what they sow eventually.
That'll do it for today's program. We're back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck here on Blaze TV. Until then, John 3:17.